Dude, welcome back.
Hi.
Hey, it's Alvaro, everyone.
Thanks for squeezing me in.
Alvaro is back. I had you on, let me turn the volume down a little bit. So you were on an earlier episode, and honestly, one of the most popular and beloved episodes, I think, from the viewers and also people I know. I was actually talking to my good friend Jen, who I've known for years, since high school. Her husband started watching the pod. He was like, dude, I just saw the episode with Alvaro. So fucking funny. And I think you're a really unique. I think you'd be a great podcast guest on any podcast because you're in such a unique position. You live such a specialized lifestyle that I think a lot of people only ever get a glimpse of through movies, media, podcasts. Just you interact with a lot of people that really only exist in people's minds as like, all right, these are abstract people. You don't actually ever meet people like this in the wild, but you interact with them on a regular basis.
You do meet them.
You do meet them, but you don't know. You don't know really how they are.
Yeah.
And you actually get to see a lot of people for who they are because you exist in this safe space. What am I trying to say here? How would you describe the community that you're a part of?
It's obviously, a little bit of a secret community where it's like it's held in special places, special events, special websites, special apps and stuff like that. It's out there. A lot of people just, are, I don't want to say ashamed, but concerned about being exposed or being out there because a lot of people have jobs where their true self may not be accepted.
Right.
It's like when
there's still some taboo to it, even though it's becoming increasingly more mainstream and more widely accepted. We're becoming a more tolerant society, I think, in some ways. There's still a level of taboo to what's the name of this? Does this community have a name? How would you identify? What would you call the community that you're a part of?
It goes by, the kink community, or they just call it the lifestyle.
The lifestyle.
Yeah.
I've heard that, and you've told me about that. And it's just known as the lifestyle, which is, I think, intentionally vague. Because I think once you start getting more specific than that, it raises some eyebrows. And how would you explain the lifestyle to someone, let's say a viewer who has no idea what we're talking about? How would you explain what the lifestyle is to them? Because I have no concept of how to even begin to explain this.
It's the way I would describe it. It's a place where if you were to join the lifestyle, one, there's different aspects of it. There's different kinks. There's different ways of approaching it in the sense of like, I want this. I want to be in this type of environment. So you seek the community that has it. The way I would describe it, it kind of feels like a safe space to really let loose.
Okay.
In the same way that like back in the day, you would have these secret underground clubs or bars where the LGBT community could be out there and be gay or be whatever they want to do, be transvestite, transsexual, whatever. There's still a lot of things you said taboo, and it's about finding these parties or clubs or events where you're allowed to express yourself in a safe environment without judgment, without hesitation, and just overall being happy to be yourself and being happy to express yourself.
Okay, so in my eyes, it feels like a safe place where you can just express yourself, like express your true sexual identity openly and freely, and have that be received in a safe environment that is full of reciprocity. I'm butchering that word, but also like consent and basically where you can just like be, as Lady Gaga put it at one point, let your freak flag fly without any sort of judgment.
Exactly. As long as the only way I've seen in the community since I've been a part of it, that you are judged is when you violate some of the ground rules. Just like one of the big ones is consent.
Right. And let's face it, even though like the United States, America is pretty sexually open, I would say, compared to a lot of other countries in the world, I still feel like it just doesn't even scratch the surface of how sexually fluid and open people are to, like, how kinky people are. right?
it's
Like we all have something that like turns us on, that makes us like just light up or whatever, but we're not allowed to talk about it. Otherwise we're looked at, even though if we said it in a room of people, everyone's got their own thing that's just as seemingly depraved or unique. I wouldn't even say depraved, but just, unique. And the community that you're talking about, the lifestyle is a place where people can congregate and just be themselves in that in that arena of that sexual energy. You can just let it fly and not have to worry about judgment. Look, I couldn't even imagine talking about this stuff with even some of my closest friends. I think that's probably the case with a lot of people.
Well, that's the thing too. Like, so you keep like fetishizing it, sexualizing it. Here's the thing: the community doesn't have to be about sex.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be sexual. It doesn't have to be fetishized.
So it's not just
It's
sex.
not just sex. There's a lot of things in the community, in the kink community, in the lifestyle community that have absolutely nothing to do with sex. There's
okay.
portions,
What are some of those things?
So you have portions of like, you have stuff like BDSM, sensory play, flogging, shibari, which can be sexual in a way from an outside perspective, but have absolutely nothing to do with sex. You can enter like sensory play, something as simple like you've seen it in movies where like they put a little bit of hot wax down your back and stuff like that, giving someone a sensual massage and stuff like that. It doesn't have to be exactly sexual.
Well,
it seems sexual from the outside perspective.
So what do you say to someone, like I would say the average person would hear what you just said and go, well, all that stuff sounds pretty kinky and sexual to me. How do you separate that from sex?
It depends on like how you're going about it and stuff like that. I'm not an expert, but like for me, like the big separation usually like is you can engage in an activity. Like I engage in sensory play, but it doesn't actually involve anything sex wise. So there's no penetration, there's no sex, there's sometimes even no arousal. Sometimes it's just about, for me with sensory play, it's about putting on a blindfold, having, being tickled by a feather, or having a pinwheel ran down your back, or even just having a piece of ice cube ran down your back. That sensation that not everybody gets to experience on a day-to-day sometimes just sets you off. And usually when people are having these experiences done to them, you enter what we call subspace, which is like this relaxation where you're almost high, you're floating out of this galaxy, out of body of experience when you're in these situations. Like someone can be either tied up or just laying on the bed receiving a massage with a blindfold on. And there's even massages where it's more than one person giving you a massage, and you're such in a different environment than you're used to, like you're just enjoying it. So for me, who's like a big dude, one of the things I like is, which a lot of guys like, is when you have your back scratched just gently by your partner and stuff like that. Just having nails ran down your back just gently. It doesn't even have to be aggressive. Just kind of gives you that goosebumps. It gives you that relaxation, that sensation that you just don't get often.
Okay, so my question here is, someone like an outsider is looking at that going, okay, if you're getting tied up and you're getting, flogged, or you're getting like a candle wax down your back, I think the average person is going to look at that and go, well, the feelings that you're getting from that are sexual. But it seems like what you're saying is not necessarily. It seems like this subspace mindset that or like state of being that you really enter upon a lot of these activities is actually not sexual at its core. So to an outsider, how would you explain that sensation? How is it different than a sexual feeling? Because I think that's what a lot of people struggle to grasp.
So for me, like the simplest way, it would be like when you go get a massage. Sometimes the massage feels just so good that you fall asleep during it. That little buffer between when you fall asleep and you're like relaxing, it's what I would describe as subspace, as my personal experience in subspace. That grogginess you feel after you wake up, after like, hey, massage is over, get dressed and all that stuff. That moment of where you're stretching, you're like, God, that felt so good. That would be what we would, you're coming down from your subspace. Okay.
So it really can be just like a preference, right? It's like everyone I think is pretty privy to the idea of getting a nice massage and feeling that relaxation and state of just almost like you're elated, right? What you're saying, what I'm hearing is you can get that same sensation of getting a nice massage from things like maybe getting bound by rope, the feeling of rope and how it's constricting your body. Like similar sensations can be evoked from activities like that aren't purely or necessarily sexual, but are relaxing or sedative in a way, almost like ASMR inducing. Am I on the right track?
No,
or
you're on the right track, but like there's also the other end of the spectrum where it's not just a relaxation. So for instance, when you do like impact play, caning, where it's like you're hitting someone on the back really hard, you're creating welts and bruises and stuff like that. When you're hitting someone like that, your body will release natural endorphins, painkillers per se. It's the same way when you hit like a bit of adrenaline rush. You'll get this high from being your body releasing these natural endorphins, and then you'll start to come down. It's the same way. There's not just relaxation, but there's the more painful side of it.
Interesting. It's interesting. I never really thought about it until this moment, but it kind of reminds me of spicy food. Like when you eat something spicy, it's a sensation that is kind of alarming. Like you were saying, when you're getting flogged or you're getting like whacked by something or getting hit, and like you feel that sting. I mean, that's kind of like eating a habanero pepper or eating like a spicy salsa, where it's like it starts making you sweat, and it actually invokes like a sense of dopamine release and an adrenaline release, because your body's reacting to like a sense or a measure of pain, whether it's pain or pleasure. But it's not. I've never felt a sexual feeling eating a pepper.
No, but you end up like walking away after it's been, after it got really hot, like a habanero or even a Carolina Reaper, someone who enjoys spicy food. You get that initial rush of like, you get hot, you get sweaty, you get all these unnatural state that you're used to. You're out of your comfort zone per se, and you're either enjoying it or you're not. It's the same thing with kink. Sometimes they're pleasurable, sometimes they're not, which is funny that you said that, because like literally the other day I saw a video where it's saying that like if you enjoy really spicy food, you might be a really kinky person because of the large amount of discomfort you can either handle, or the large amount of difference in your normal body chemistry in a situation.
Interesting. So it's almost like sometimes your body and mind just want to feel something out of the norm. Like it's almost just like a pleasurable feeling that you get from, whether it's pain or a certain type of pleasure, you're feeling a sense of like unique interaction with another person.
But you can have that without kink too. People jump out of planes, go skydiving. You and I have done where we drive cars at ridiculous speeds, and we get that grip the steering wheel by the handle, and you're like, moments of sudden change just thrill us.
Is this a two-way street? Is this something that only the person, like let's use the example of rope tying, right? Yeah. Is this something that only the person on the receiving end feels, or is this something that the person actually doing the bounding and the roping feels as well, or is that a different feeling?
So they are too. So if you're quote unquote the person on the bottom, the submissive, we call that, if you're receiving, that'll be subspace. But when you're the one doing the tying or the top and all that stuff, you can enter a space, what's called dom space. So for instance, like when I'm doing shibari and I'm tying someone up, I'm tying their arms, they're bounding them, they feel like, they might feel like, that thrill of being restricted, or that comfort of being held tightly by the rope, almost like a weighted blanket. While I'm doing it, I'm feeling this creative flow going of like, I look at my partner and I'm like enjoying the situation. I'm thinking, I'm being creative. It's a creative outlet for me. The same way when I finish tying someone up, I stand back and I look at my artwork. The same way that somebody that paints a drawing or something like that, they stand back and they get that gratification of like, I did a great job. This was thrilling, or this was amazing, or this was frustrating. If I'm trying to do a certain kind of tie and I can't get it to hold right or bite the right way, I might get frustrated. The same way if an artist is trying to like draw a specific shadow or an accent or a face, and they get frustrated.
So it seems to me like you could be have a relationship with someone where you are, doing things with them, engaging in these types of activities that is not sexual at all. It is purely just from a point of enjoying each other's company and presence in this fashion. But why do you think, I would say, mainstream society tends to tie a sexual note to all these things, like BDSM? Why is it so heavily ingrained and associated with sexual activity when it can, like you demonstrated, cannot have anything to do with it?
I personally, I mean, I don't know. It could be a lot of things, but I think personally it might be because of, like you said earlier, the taboo feature of it. Like it's not the normal. It's not, you know, it's people in a vulnerable position. It's a lot of times people, it's also like dressed down. So like there's, if you look at some of the original films that were like, you know, filmed with cameras were first done, you know, black and white 1920s video, a lot of it was pornographic.
Yeah.
It was like a lot of like black and white porn and stuff like that. There was also BDSM stuff of like spankings and all that stuff. They weren't part of the not the norm. They were like, you know, taboo. They're not very pardon, you know, with the language of the Christianity. It's not very Christian, not very Catholic. It's very like, ooh, this is bad. It's thrilling to do something naughty per se, you know? Like if you're with your partner and you know that they're at work and stuff like that, you know, how many times has someone's wife or girlfriend or partner sent them a risque picture while they're at work for that sudden rush of excitement? So there's a lot of to do with it, in my opinion. I can't be sure, but it's like the thrill of something new that seems tantalizing, you know.
Would you say that in any of these activities there can be some overlap with sexual arousal or excitement?
There can always be overlap.
It's like an Venn diagram. Like sometimes it's just purely just the activity. Sometimes it's purely sex, and then there's somewhere in the middle where you could bind someone up with rope and still feel sexual energy and sexual arousal on both sides. So how do you navigate that in the community? Are there like people who are like, no, I just do this purely non-sexual, and then there's other people like, well, I do it, but it's a sexual thing for me. How do you draw the lines, the boundaries between all that?
So it comes down to whoever, two consenting adults or more consenting adults. You negotiate before you start the scene. You negotiate, what are you comfortable with? What are you not comfortable with? Where can I touch you? Where can I not touch you? Are you okay with, say, this toy, that toy, this rope, this flogger, this kind of being touched, hit, or caressed anywhere? The way you kind of navigate it from person to person is, if you're meeting someone new for the first time and you're going to, what we call, play with them, I personally like to get to know them beforehand. I won't typically meet somebody, say, at a party and stuff like that, and jump into doing what we call a scene. From time to time, I do, if I feel like, hey, they're a little experienced, so they know where their limitations are. They know what they like and what they don't like. But if it's somebody new, usually I like to get to know them, talk about what we call negotiation, negotiate what isn't and isn't allowed, limitations. And that's how I've been taught to go about this, in securing that I don't violate or cross somebody's boundaries. Because somebody might have a complete discomfort of like, you know, like for me, I think it's really interesting that I've played with partners who are okay with me hitting them in the back with floggers, canes, you know, leaving their backs bruised and sometimes welts and sometimes a little bit of blood from time to time. But yet I can't touch their toes because they're super sensitive and they're ticklish. Sure. It's like, okay, I just spent the last 45 minutes going to town on your back with, you know, thick pieces of leather, leaving, you know, what some people would consider, you know, assault per se. But yet, if I try to tickle your foot, now I've crossed a boundary for whatever reason. That's where I feel like you can kind of negotiate, is you spend time either with someone you're going to play with or someone you have played with. You build a comfort level with somebody you consistently play with. You learn their limitations and stuff like that. But that's all part of the negotiation and consent part.
I mean, it seems like a necessary part of the process because it's such, at least for now, an underground practice where you can't just, as far as I know, you can't just go to like some parlor shop on the street that offers this. I mean, unless you know the right places or whatever, but it's not as mainstream as just like a normal massage parlor. So it's not like when I go to a massage parlor, they don't have to ask me, are you okay if I touch your back and your lower back and in your shoulders? It's already assumed because this is a mainstream thing that's popularized.
Yeah.
But in this underground sort of scene, communication and consent and being on the same page with your partner, whoever you're dealing with, is extremely important. My question is, one thing I was wondering is it out of pocket in this community or out of the norm to just ask them, hey, I know you're like into this type of play. Is this a sex thing for you? or is this a totally non-sexual, just subspace, dom space thing for you? Is it normal to ask? Is it out of pocket to come up like in the community to be like, is this a sex thing? Like, do you get sexually aroused from this, or is this just that other feeling you were talking about of just being elated?
I think you gotta. It doesn't hurt to ask.
I feel like that'd be a big question to ask.
It doesn't hurt to ask. I've never quote unquote asked it in that way.
Okay.
I'm more of like keep it on topic. Like, hey, you want to be flogged? I'm gonna talk about flogging. I'm not gonna exceed past.
But doesn't that seem like a big kind of important question? To like just an important thing to know about what they're into, if it's sexually arousing for them or not. Kind of like if you're asking someone if they're asexual or non, you know what I mean?
I personally wouldn't ask somebody that because.
Why do you think?
Because for me, it's like I don't know what they're getting out of it per se. At the end, I'm not gonna play 21 questions in the sense of like, are they soothing some trauma? Is this their trauma response to something they experience? I don't want to ask too many questions.
But that's not really digging deep. That's just saying, is this a sex thing for you or not? I mean, like, they don't have to extrapolate on, it's a sex thing and here's a million reasons why because of my childhood. You're just asking like, oh, is this like, because I feel like for me coming into it, like imagining myself if I was coming to this community and I was trying to get a lay of the land and I was experiencing new things with a new partner, I might want to know where they're at so I could know where I'm at. Like, should I be sexually aroused while I'm doing this with you? Is that how you're feeling doing it with me? Is that a conversation that never happens?
It doesn't hurt to ask.
Okay.
But don't, like, if they say no, don't chase down the question.
Of course.
No, I know, I'm just saying. But it's just like, I've never per se have asked that question.
Okay.
So, but you're coming in from a different view than I am.
Okay.
So for me, it's like when I've gone to the clubs and stuff like that, it's we're doing A, we're not worrying about B per se, as long as everyone's consenting. There are these really cool, like, online, you can find these like questionnaires that I have one in my fun bag where it's like I do ask some questions, but they're mostly about consent, safety, anything I should be aware of, anywhere I shouldn't touch, any sensitive spots, any health issues that I should be worried about. Like if I'm tying someone up and they tell me I dislocated my shoulder in a car accident 2 years ago, I know, hey, I got to take it easy on the shoulder. Or if they have poor circulation issue due to like Raynaud's disease or whatever, I know that I have to constantly check in around these areas and stuff like that. I don't really dive into the psychological of like, hey, are you getting turned on by this? Unless it's established partner that I'm like, hey, would you be comfortable continuing this a little further where if I want to engage in more of a sexual activity, I'm not going to assume they do or don't want to engage in it, but it doesn't hurt to ask. But it's also at the same time, ask politely, don't be a dick, be like, hey, is this, are you getting hard from this?
Right. No. Yeah. You wouldn't want to be too abrupt about it, or you want to be polite, and really just kind of,
oh no. Yeah.
Take a peek inside their mind, like just get to know what they're feeling. But another thing I was thinking is, we've been talking about this community, the lifestyle. It's also, I feel like for the people listening for the first time, it's probably seems so abstract. Like we're just talking about these vague terms like the lifestyle, the community. Where does this actually exist? How does this actually manifest we live in LA, we live in Los Angeles, California. This is something that I've never come across in the 36 years I've lived in this state. Where do these things take place? How does this all work? How do these people meet each other? Where do they go? Is it, what's the infrastructure of this lifestyle and community like?
It's a simpler answer than you think. It's all on Google.
Okay.
So like type in LA, you go to Google, you type in LA BDSM clubs, you'll get a couple of them. But an easier way to go about it is that there's a website called FetLife, FetLife.com. Think of it as like a MySpace or Facebook for the kink community.
Okay. For short for fetish?
Yeah. I'm guessing, yeah. But you go on there, you make a profile, and you can check out their event pages, and you'll find a lot of the local clubs. They'll host a lot of parties. Some of the clubs in LA, I think we're lucky because they have a lot of educational options in the sense where they have what they call arrivals or newbie nights or, discovery nights where like, hey, this is a new experience that somebody's been wanting to try. This is a safe environment to come out and learn or be educated in. With us being in LA, one of my favorite clubs that I like to go to that does these nights is called 910 WeHo. They're based out of West Hollywood. And I've taken other beginner classes in other clubs and stuff like that, but I really like their class because their educators, I feel like, are much better at explaining the new aspects for like newbies. So when I first started learning shibari, I took their tasting.
What is shibari for those who don't know?
Shibari is the Japanese art of tying somebody with rope. Usually it's hemp or jute rope.
Yeah.
For either restraint, to either hold them immobilized, or to what I like to do is create harnesses and for either suspension or for just photographing. You can incorporate it with or without sex. It's up to you and your partner and stuff like that. But that's what I liked about like going to 910 WeHo. They had a very beginner friendly class where they even taught us the first knot, tips and tricks to, like, you know, when your first time tying, how to tie it, how to check if it's too tight, concerns about like safety, like, hey, if this rope is too tight, you might feel if you're the one being tied up, you might feel a sensation or you might cut circulation off. 910 WeHo, I've had really good experiences with their flogging, their sensory play classes, and their shibari classes.
Would you say that, and here's the case with every community, there's toxicity in every space you look at. How does that manifest in this instance? Are there toxic people that need to be dealt with? Are there creepers? Because you've told me about some, places where you've gone where in one room there's like a monogamous couple having sex, in another one there's an orgy, another one there's a gangbang. How does all of this, I think when like primal urges and primal emotions and horniness and just general human desires are flying rampant, how does all of this get enforced or controlled? And what are maybe some instances you've seen where things maybe got out of hand?
No, so like you were saying, like, okay, so on the first one about like how this community, honestly, since I've joined it, has been nothing but safe, in my opinion, from what I've seen from reputable clubs and parties. And
for the record, it feels like we're trying to recruit people for this, but we're not. I'm just genuinely curious as to how this all operates.
No, yeah. So a lot of the clubs. The big thing about the community is that it is a lot safer than you think, because at every club I've been to, the standing rules are always ask for consent and safety words.
Right.
And you ask me, how do you regulate these? A good club, a good event, a good venue will have something what they call the dungeon monitor, which is usually a person who like walks around and checks on people. Sometimes they wear a sash, sometimes they wear, like a bracelet that glows in the dark or something like that. And when people are like having these parties and you're going into these rooms, usually you have to like reserve a room or ask for a room or whatever. And if it's a reputable location, the dungeon master usually asks a couple of questions about consent, safety words, and stuff like that. In the kink community, since I've joined, and the standing safety words have been red, green, yellow. Red means, green means, hey, we're good. Yellow means like, hey, whatever you just did, slow down, too hard, you hit me or whatever. And red means end, stop, the end of all.
Yeah.
And you have to, if you're engaging in an activity with a partner and you're the bottom or the submissive, technically you should be the one in control at all times, because if you yell red, the scene needs to stop. Your top or your dom needs to undo or remove you from the situation to put you in a safer environment.
Right.
And if you're the top or the dom, you need to know that when your partner says those, you need to take care of them. And even when you're finishing with a scene, you need to do their aftercare, make sure that they're okay. If they need water, food, a hug, a blanket, or just to be left alone, you have to do that. And that's part of the education side of the community. Since I've joined and been a part of it, I constantly hear about education, negotiation, safe words, and all that stuff. That's like the big standing key, which a lot of people, if they're going to join in, it's kind of like the foundation of being part of the community. Because you're not going to get anywhere, and two, you're not going to have a good time if you're not consenting or negotiating with anybody. If you're crossing somebody's boundaries, violating their safe word or violating their safety, and you're not going to have a good time in the community because you'll be ostracized. There's a guy here in LA, I don't want to say his name, but he's known for quote unquote pushing people past their limits. I've heard this directly. I've heard from multiple partners and friends where he's violated their safety and their consent. That guy is, from my understanding, he's been banned from most of the clubs in LA. He's constantly trying to host his own parties of himself, so that way he can keep doing these violations of people. I don't hear too many people who go to his events and then keep coming back after they've been exposed to a good, safe environment.
Yeah, he's built a negative reputation.
Yeah, he's built a negative reputation to the point where I've had a personal experience with him. And to this day, anyone that newbies or not, the first thing I do is warn them about him.
Yeah.
And it's
and they don't ban him from.
He's been banned. Yeah.
Event. He's been banned.
But there's like FetLife, like we haven't, from what I've seen, there have been articles and posts, not articles, but like posts about him posted online on like thread boards and stuff like that, and warning people about him, but they get pulled off for bullying or whatever, for calling him out, and it's hard to get him banned off of the sites. I just got he's paying for Instagram ads. I got an ad for him. He's trying to do his own little thing right now on Instagram, and I reported the account because I know what he's really into and how he violates, like I've heard it from a partner of mine, how he violated her safety on more than one occasion. And then from my personal experience with him, where he wanted me to violate a boundary of one of my partners to suit his needs for how he taught his classes. And I never engaged with him again. And everyone I've spoken to ever since then about him, if they either have engaged with him in the past, they refuse to engage with him again. He's just building himself a bad reputation. But so many people come in new into the community that sometimes you're told about him, sometimes you're not. Sometimes you find out fire is hot, sometimes you're told fire is hot.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. I think I'm always fascinated about these get-togethers where there's just so much sexual activity, in one place, where there's someone banging over here, there's a gangbang over there. What are these things called? Are these called? Do they have a name?
So if you're talking about like sex over here, gangbang over here, those are like usually like sex parties, gangbangs, swinger parties. It all depends.
So this is a subset of the lifestyle.
Yeah,
it's not the whole lifestyle, but it's a part of it.
There's a lot of flavors in the kink community.
Sure.
Some are purely.
Some are just like you're just flogging people and there's no penetration, there's no sex. Sometimes you're just bounding people up and there's no sex and no penetration, there's no sexual arousal.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's wild sex parties like this. It's a spectrum.
Yeah, there's a lot of quote unquote kinks that suit individuals or groups per se. Some have, for example, some kinks that don't directly involve play is that there are people who enjoy dressing up in particular outfits, men dressing up in women's outfits, or
dressing up as babies or some shit like that.
Yeah, or women dressing up, or dressing up as in diapers or in kids' clothing, or a sexy maid or a rabbit or some kind of unique. Some people like to dress up in leather, latex. Some people like to dress up with literally just rolls of tape around them.
Is there any kink that goes too far for this lifestyle that you've seen where it's like, even in this lifestyle, that's a little over the line?
That's based on a person per person thing. Some people like certain things. Some people don't like certain things. It's about whoever you're engaging with.
Right.
As long as it's between two consenting adults and an appropriate environment, in my opinion, it's the only way to go about it. For when I say appropriate environment, there are things that can be done at home that should only be done at home. And then there's things, people like, want to have sex in their car per se, or do something kinky in public, dress up a certain way in public. In my opinion, if you can enjoy that as long as you're within consenting adults. But when you start exposing people outside of it, like if your kink is like walking around naked, you're not going to walk around naked in a public space with children and women who are not consenting to whatever you're presenting. But you might engage that in a kink club where everybody might be consenting to that. It's a little different. There's appropriate places to do things. There's appropriate times to do that.
Have you ever seen anyone like? What about like shitting on someone's chest? Is that?
I haven't seen that.
You haven't seen that?
No,
Okay.
But it does happen.
Okay.
There
Does that happen at like the sex parties?
So I would normally stuff like that. They have ground rules per se. Like they may not allow fluids. Yeah, brown rules. They may not allow fluids. They may not allow certain things.
Sure.
You know, like there are people who enjoy knife play or hitting somebody so hard with a cane to where blood is drawn. Some people, some clubs and all that stuff have ground rules like no blood, no urine, no this. Yeah. Or if they do, they have usually some kind of guidelines on how to do it.
Okay, so if you're at one of these sex parties where people just seem to be...
They're not all sex parties. Just call them parties or events.
Well, I'm talking about specifically a sex party. Okay. Though. If you're at specifically a sex party, because I think that feels like one of the more... I feel like obscure, like kind of shrouded away from mainstream society things that I feel like I'm fascinated about because I know so little about it. Are most of the people there, because I know you're polyamorous, are most of the people there polyamorous? Is it a split? Is it... No,
polyamory is a little different than, say, per kink. So, like, you can be in a monogamous relationship with somebody and be a swinger. Or a cockle, you know,
sure,
or you know, stuff like that. Where sex is, you go to a swinger club or a sex party, and you're there either to engage in sexual activity with somebody else, or just engage with sexual activity with your own partner, or you're just there to watch. Polyamory is a different thing than per se the sex swinging club and stuff like that.
Right.
In my opinion, because polyamory for me, as someone who's polyamorous and in the lifestyle, polyamory for me is like, I am engaging with multiple partners on a deeper level that is more physical. So an emotional level, I bond with my partners if I'm dating them or engaging with them in a deeper emotional level. For instance, I've had partners in the past where we were kink and had nothing to do with sexual. I wouldn't consider them a polyamorous partner. I would consider them a kink partner.
Got it.
But when you go to like swinger parties or sex parties or hotel takeovers or whatever, and people are engaging in sexual activities, they may not be polyamorous. It could just be, you know, a wife and a husband want to have sex with other people, or a girlfriend and boyfriend, and they engage in those activities, and they do it there and they don't bring it home per se.
So as someone who's polyamorous yourself, I would imagine that polyamory, like any type of relationship structure, is subjective to the person, right? Everyone has their own boundaries. So what are your boundaries as a polyamorous individual? If you were to engage in a polyamorous relationship, do you have your own distinct lines that you draw for, like, all right, how many partners can the person I'm dating have? Or like a number of factors. Do you have your own...
I do. I have my own boundaries and stuff like that, but those boundaries, I negotiate them or set them with the partner I'm choosing to be with. My rule that I may have with one partner may not be their same rule with another one of their partners.
Are there any deal breakers for you in a polyamorous relationship?
I think everybody needs to have deal breakers. Everyone should know what they want with who they want, and if there's something you're just adamant about, it's the same way, like if you're in a monogamous relationship, you're going to have a red flag or something like, this is it. If this, doesn't happen. But in a monogamous relationship, it should be the same in a polyamorous relationship. For instance, like, if for me it would be like, I wouldn't quote unquote date a Nazi.
Oh, well, I think that's...
No, I know.
Even if you're non-polyamorous, I think that's a pretty big one.
There's a lot of people out there who are married to them.
Sure.
But it's the same way.
But that doesn't necessarily relate to polyamory any more than it does a monogamous relationship.
Exactly. But that's what I'm saying. Like, it could, like, my boundary might be... So, like,
But is there anything specific to polyamory, a polyamorous related boundary that you've set for yourself that maybe someone in a monogamous relationship couldn't relate to?
So for me, it's I won't, personally, like me, I won't engage in any kind of polyamorous relationship with a partner that doesn't take care of their sexual health seriously. For instance, not constant, but consistent STD panels.
Okay. That's
stuff
fair.
Like that.
Yeah.
Like if I'm sleeping with you and you're sleeping with somebody else, I want to make sure that you're being safe. If your partner's not being safe, that's beef between you guys. but I would need to know if you're being safe.
But as long as they're doing that, it doesn't matter to you how many partners they have?
No.
Okay.
I mean, some people, not to me. I mean, I wouldn't want to be personally with somebody that, say, has 31 partners and I get 1 day out of the month.
Sure.
So, I don't set limits on what somebody does with their time. I don't own anyone. I don't own their time.
Right.
But my boundaries would be based on what I need to do to take care of myself. So I would identify as solo polyamorous. There's other types of polyamory. My type of solo polyamory that I've invested in and that I'm trying to stick to is the solo portion, where I need to take care of me above everybody else. You have hierarchy polyamory, where it's like you and your partner or one of your partners are end all be all. Everyone below that is secondary. I don't do that. For me, it's me, my kid, because I'm a dad, and then partners, stuff like that.
Right.
And that's the order. I need to take care of me to take care of my kid, and then I need to be good to take care of my partners.
Is your kid included in the hierarchy of polyamory?
No,
That's I'm
just saying me per se. Like, but as a dad,
but there is a, what did you call it? Communal polyamory, where you're all equal. There's no hierarchy of which partner takes priority over another. Yeah. If both of you have a birthday on the same day, it's not like one gets the attention of one partner over the other. It's like everyone's equal.
Exactly. But for me, it's not. For me, I'm the priority because that's solo polyamory.
Solo polyamory.
Yeah.
Okay.
Polyamorous. Yeah. So for me, my priority above everybody else is me.
Okay.
But that's because I've been in, I went through a situation where I gave more than I got back from my ex-spouse. I've given more of myself than I wanted to.
Right.
And it caused me to feel a certain way about my relationship. And I'm trying not to repeat that.
Yeah.
In the same way, and I'll give you the example why I'm trying to be this. My therapist put it this way. And he broke it down. It's the simplest way. But when you get on an airplane and they say if the airbag deploys, put your mask on first before you help somebody put their mask on. My therapist said, you're the type of person who would put someone else's mask on before you put your own on, right? And I'm like, yeah, because I want to be helpful. He said, okay, great. In the moments that you put their mask on and you reach for your mask, you've now passed out due to oxygen deprivation.
Sure.
What good are you to the people you wanted to help when you're immobilized?
Right.
And so if I put my mask on, I'm much more helpful to the people I care about if they're passed out.
Makes sense.
So that's what I'm working on is I want to make sure I'm good so the people I care about are good.
So that I think that is a good description of solo polyamory.
My definition. It might be different for someone else.
Is there a solo monogamy? Can I be solo monogamous where it's like I love my girlfriend, but I'm going to take myself over her? Is like, why do you think that's not a term, but solo polyamorous is?
There's so many terms. You could say you're solo monogamous. It might come off as just being selfish in a monogamous relationship. But if you're being selfish in a way to protect your partner, you could define. There's so many flavors in this. There's so many terms. It's an interesting term
because I feel like I don't know, is it a term that needs to exist? Because I feel like it's so universal where it's like in any type or structure of relationship, just in life, even if you're not in a relationship, you should take care of yourself first so that you can help others.
But some people don't. I didn't.
I'm just saying it's interesting that for polyamory, there's a term for it. Like there's a recognizable, universally acknowledged term where it's like, I don't really see that in monogamous relationships or,
there might be, but maybe
it's because there's so many different parties. Maybe it's because in polyamory, there's like three or more people at a time where it's just like, it can be overwhelming. I mean, being in a monogamous relationship is overwhelming at times, I can't even imagine having extra partners to it. So maybe there's more of an emphasis on self-care.
The solo part of my solo polyamory has really nothing to do with my polyamorous partners.
Sure.
It's just a way for me to emphasize when I meet somebody, hey, I am looking out for myself. I need to make sure I'm okay at all times.
Yeah.
When you're per se in a hierarchy polyamory is you're protecting the unity of you and your partner versus protecting the unity with yourself.
Okay.
And then when it would be like communal polyamory, is you're taking care of everybody, making sure everyone's on the same level, which is a beautiful thing per se. But if you're putting yourself before others, that would be my portion of the solo polyamory. Or if you're putting others' needs before yours, for me, as someone who was a people pleaser, like that was detrimental, whatever the word is, to my to my mental health, because I was one of those people who would literally slip my wrist for someone else. And what good am I to anyone else if I were to do that? So for me, it's like I need to take care of me to take care of the people I care about, because in the end, I know I want to take care of the people I care about. So I need to be okay to take care of them.
Yeah, man. I do feel like that's something that most people struggle with, is that I think we're a species that struggles with extremes. I think a lot of people either care too much about everyone else and just like tries to make everybody else feel good before they really acknowledge and take care of their own, their own self, or they're completely narcissistic and don't give a shit about anyone. And I feel like both extremes are bad.
Well, it's not just two extremes.
It's not. But I feel like a lot of like finding the balance is the craft. That's the tricky part.
And that's the thing. You need to invest that time into you and into whatever you're into to find a balance.
Right.
It's not easy. Balancing life, work, personal relationships, anything is difficult. But that's why I've been in therapy for 10 years, finding that balance.
Yeah.
No, I don't think anyone can ever be 100%, but I feel like we could all be in a comfortable state, but it takes a lot of legwork.
How do you advertise, do you tell the people in like your innermost circle in your life, family, friends, about your polyamory? Because I know that for some people it's probably easier to accept than others. Is this something that you're completely open with everyone in your life?
No.
Or is this something that you reserve to tell some people versus others?
I personally pick and choose who I tell. Okay. For instance, I'm not going to tell my 9-year-old daughter that. Maybe not now, maybe not ever, but I don't choose to tell her now. I'm also not going to meet a random stranger at Starbucks and be like, yeah, can I get a Venti hot chocolate? By the way,
because
I'm
that looks
polyamorous.
Weird. Right.
At the same time, I'm not going to go to my family reunion and unexpectedly be telling everybody that I'm polyamorous. But some people do, because they've introduced their partner to part of their family and they want to introduce maybe a second partner. It's about what you're comfortable with and when you choose to disclose, and who do you want to disclose it to.
What do you think are the challenges of like telling a kid or your kid about polyamory? Like, what do you think keeps you from telling her about it?
She's 9. She's in my opinion, she's not ready, quote unquote, to be hearing this complicated life journey. She's worrying right now about spelling bees and soccer. I have some ground rules related to my kid about my relationships. I won't be introducing my daughter to any of my partners unless they seem like a long-term partner. Either we've been dating for a year or so, whatever. But that's my opinion, because I'm trying to protect my daughter.
Gotcha. Yeah,
but there are people out there who will introduce their partner to their 6, 7, 8-year-olds because they're trying to show them that sense of community. That's them.
Right.
Everyone needs to feel it out, and accordingly to what
works for them.
What works for them.
Sure.
There are right ways of doing it, and there are definitely some wrong ways of doing it. But the right way for me might be the wrong way for someone else, and the right way for somebody else might be the wrong way for me.
There's no one size fits all answer.
No.
What was your journey? Because I don't think anyone's really, like wired for polyamory, because we live in a society that's heavily monogamous. So what was your journey into discovering that you were like, hey, I kind of want this lifestyle? I feel like there's more options than just having one exclusive partner. What was your journey to get there? Because I feel like we all start at the same spot, which is you're just told You have a soulmate, maybe. Maybe if you're lucky, you'll get married to one person for the rest of your life, and you somehow broke away from this mainstream path. How did you even get there to that point?
As you know, when I separated from my ex-wife, things between me and her were a little different per se, because at that time when me and her were still together, we were swingers per se.
Okay.
We engaged in swinging activity where at the time it was just a sexual act of gratification for us. I have a history where I developed either crushes or the time that I'll admit it, I did cheat on my ex-wife back a long time ago. I'm not proud of it, but looking back at it, I felt like I cared about her, but I felt like I could care or care for someone else.
Okay.
That's my personal journey. When we separated and I was single for the first time in 16 years, I made up for quote unquote lost time from, exploring in my 20s. I was with her since we were 15, and at 31, I was single for the first time in a long time.
That's wild.
So I sowed my oats, as they say, and engaged in, meeting new people and stuff like that. But for me, I started to realize that I wanted to care for somebody else more than just physically, sexually, gratification wise. I cared about people on an emotional level, and I realized that I am capable of caring for more than one person at a time. So for me, it's like, why would I want to be in a situation with monogamy that I might meet somebody else that I develop feelings for? And why would I want to deny myself that happiness or that opportunity, or put myself in a situation where I might feel guilty for having a crush on somebody else?
Here's a kicker that I'm sure you can shed some light on. How does polyamory work for marriage? Like, is there a chunk of the polyamorous community that's like wants to get married and has a vision for being in a polyamorous marriage? Or is that just something that most people in that community or subscribe to that lifestyle just assume, like, or just accept that marriage is not on the table? What other societal norms like marriage how are those things perceived by the polyamorous community and by yourself?
Depends on the people.
So it's
completely varied. For instance, I'm aware of and in contact or relations with somebody that's either they're in a married monogamous relationship and they open up their marriage per se because of whatever their own choices. There's also people who knew that they are polyamorous but for a time decided to be monogamous. There's just so many options and opportunities for people to engage. I've heard of a husband and wife, or a husband and husband, or wife and wife, partners, married spouses who both fall in love with somebody else, and they bring them into their marriage, or accept them or participate. I don't want to say bring them into the marriage, but they both fall in love with somebody. I've also heard of wives or husbands who fall in love with somebody else and become part of them. I've also heard of a boyfriend and girlfriend, or just people who are just dating. They meet somebody that they are just in love with, and they marry that person and are still with their original partner. It's such a wide spectrum. It's such a fluid way about going about it. It's all about whoever is involved, in my opinion, whoever's involved in those relationships. Everybody has to be on the same page, or everybody has to be, willing to, I don't want to say willing. There shouldn't be any negotiation, in my opinion, when it comes to that. It's about more like being happy together and doing whatever you got to do to be happy about it without hurting or violating somebody's consent or violating somebody's safety. And sometimes if somebody disagrees with one thing or another, the amount of times that people have opened up their relationship to being polyamorous or have been polyamorous, and somebody they've been with for 10 years, and then they meet somebody after 6 months, they either don't want to be monogamous anymore. Polyamorous, and they want to be monogamous. It's about however those people decide to engage it personally.
There's just so many nuances to it. There's no science to it. There's no one size fits all solution. It really just, it seems like it just depends on the individuals, the parties in,
it needs to, in my opinion, it needs to be catered to the people
right
involved.
All right. This is just a fun this or that question, but since I feel like you've been on both sides of this, would you, or maybe not on both sides, but maybe have had a glimpse into both sides, would you rather be married monogamously and be swingers, or would you rather be in a polyamorous marriage with two other people? What do you think, personally, to you?
To me, okay, I've been monogamous, and I've been a swinger. I was a monogamous swinger.
Yeah.
I'm at the point where it's sex. For me, swinging is mostly just physical.
Okay.
Okay. So for me, I don't think I'm capable of just engaging in just sex exclusively.
Okay.
And being denied the opportunity to connect to somebody on an emotional level.
Okay.
So I would rather be monogamous than be I'm polyamorous. Sorry, yeah, I'm getting tired.
Polyamorous.
I'd rather be polyamorous, engaging in different relationships.
Maybe have like two wives as opposed to being completely monogamous.
Well, that's called when you marry more than that's polygamy. It's a little more different than polyamory.
Interesting.
Polygamy is when you marry multiple people, which I think it's like legal only in a couple of states.
Well, what are your thoughts on polygamy?
If you love more than one person, you want to marry more than one person, and all parties involved are happy about it, awesome.
Could you ever see yourself doing that?
I don't want to say marriage is off the table, but with my past experience with marriage, it's not a priority per se.
Do you have any? Is there any difference in how you view polygamous marriage versus monogamous marriage?
I think polygamy is kind of nice, and if it's in the sense of marrying and being with more than one person that you actually love. I know there's polygamy out there based on just
No, I'm talking about like two people you actually want to marry versus one person you actually want to marry. Does either one sound more appealing to you than the other for any reason?
If you love more than one person, in my opinion, why can't you be together with more than one person?
Okay.
It's in the sense let me ask you this, I'm going to really dumb it down, but do you have more than one favorite soda?
Well, yeah, of course.
Okay, so if you were told you can only have one of your favorite sodas for the rest of your life and deny you the opportunity to have another one of your favorite sodas because societal rules.
Yeah, but sodas don't argue with me and stress me out and turn my hair gray.
But they will raise your blood sugar and your...
How about a soda that raises my children? No, I'm just saying, yeah, the soda analogy kind of works, but also it doesn't because... There's a lot of drama. There's so much.
It's a simple version. I'm dumbing it way down. I'm not saying
any marriage, even a monogamous marriage, is complicated. Complicated, you know that. Yes, I know that.
We both.
Do you think? I would have to imagine that anything polyamorous, when you introduce more variables, which those variables being people that you love, into a relationship, that it complicates,
of course,
the overall thing. So. Would you say, someone who's maybe viewing or listening to this right now, who might be considering polyamorous lifestyle, what warnings would you have them heed about? Okay, look, dude, this is a different ball game. You're not dealing with one partner now. Okay. You're dealing with more partners.
It's. I don't want to say that
Is it more complicated?
I don't want. I feel like you're kind of going about this as if it's almost like you're saying it's a choice to be polyamorous.
No, I'm not. No, I know. I'm not assuming.
No, but I feel like it's coming off what would you warn people before they decide to take this? I think in the same way when you're being monogamous, you have to be warned about hey, this person might be A, B, C, or D. You might be in a monogamous relationship with a serial cheater.
Okay, let me rephrase it. What are the biggest challenges of that someone in a polyamorous relationship might experience that someone in a monogamous relationship probably doesn't have to experience?
Out of my personal experience, I can't speak for all of them.
The biggest ones for you.
For me, it's been it's been, which I think a lot of people in polyamory would agree, is scheduling enough time.
Logistics.
Yeah, logistics of like scheduling, like when do you see which partner, activities with that partner, and the other one would, in my opinion, would be kind of making sure that you're not stepping on anybody's toes, your other partner's partners or that stuff. From my experience and stuff like that, I want to be respectful to my partner's partners.
Sure, of course.
I don't want to step on their toes. I don't want to come off as rude or any of that stuff. I don't want to cause any fighting. That's my experience. Will it happen? Trauma?
Inevitably.
I don't want to say inevitably. It all depends on the people involved.
You have to have clearly defined boundaries with everyone involved.
Exactly. Everyone. I feel like everyone needs to be on somewhat of the same. Same chapter.
But that is an additional challenge to a polyamorous relationship, because now you're dealing with a whole other person or even more people's individual boundaries, because everyone is their own person.
Yes.
So if you're dealing with 2 versus 3, that's more boundaries that you're talking about that need to be discussed and talked about.
So do it.
Right. But I'm just saying, I'm just wondering, what are the bigger challenges of a polyamorous relationship? And that seems to be a big one, is there's just more minds. There's just more brains and
but there's
preferences.
There's a very simple solution.
What's that?
Communication. Strong communication.
I thought you were going to say Molly. I thought it would be a good one.
No. Mushrooms maybe. No, but it's the same thing with monogamous.
Of course.
With monogamy, communication is the biggest, most important
Have you
thing.
ever run into jealousy in a polyamorous relationship?
In mine. You know this about what happened last year with me and Cindy.
Sure.
And
right.
I'll blast. I don't care. Cindy, she became she. I don't know if she'll watch it, but last year with her discomfort and jealousy, in my opinion, of the time and attention that I was spending with my other partners.
This is what you were talking about earlier, which is like there can be a hierarchy in polyamorous relationships, or it can be communal, where everyone's treated equal. She wanted hierarchy, you wanted communal.
And I wanted solo. I wanted solo polyamory.
So solo is different than
solo because
communal.
Communal. So I'll break it down again. My definition of solo polyamory is that at the end of the day, the most important person that I need to take care of is myself.
Okay.
Hierarchy polyamory, and from my experience with her and all that stuff, is that you have a one partner or more than one partner where you're bonded, you're the top of the pyramid. Everybody below that, all additional partners or in relationships, are secondary or third to the primary relationship. Communal, from what I've seen and my understanding, is where everybody is on the same level. No one gets preferential treatment.
Right.
Nobody gets extra time. I mean, you might, stuff like that, but everybody is on the same level. So when I was with Cindy, I wanted to pursue solo polyamory. She wanted to pursue hierarchy polyamory. I wanted to make sure I was good and happy. She wanted me to make us secure and happy. She wanted to be, she wanted all of me, or at least a chunk of it. She gave me a PowerPoint presentation of like, since we're going to be hierarchy, and I'm not joking, she gave me this PowerPoint in my bed. And she was like, "This is how much time I need to devote it to me."
She had the laser pointer and everything.
No, but this is her definition. I don't want to say that her definition was wrong in any per se, but it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
She required that I'd give her a majority of my attention, and then anybody that was a secondary partner would be given this amount of attention, and the third.
She wanted a bigger slice of the pie of your time.
And at the time,
you didn't see it that way.
I didn't want that. I didn't agree with it. That's what she wanted, and it's not what I wanted. And at the end, we couldn't agree on our differences, and we split up.
Right. Okay. So yeah, that's a very I feel like that's a very, because the communication thing, we were saying like, there's like an extra person or maybe extra people that you have to communicate with. That just seems like more of the same thing of what every monogamous relationship has to do. Like, communication is like the backbone of any relationship, I think, regardless of how many partners are in it. But what you're describing here is very unique to polyamorous relationships, where how much of your time are you allocating to one particular partner versus another partner?
Yeah.
And that, I feel like, is that would be a big one. That'd be a big one, Are you currently in polyamorous relationship at the moment?
No, I mean, I'm dating casually.
Okay.
I am trying to engage in a polyamorous relationship with an individual.
You're trying.
I'm trying.
You pining.
But her and I are decided that we want to take things slow. We are communicating. We are getting to know each other before we step into a bigger relationship or bigger, the next big step, because her and I have both experienced the thrills of jumping into something way too fast because we were overcome by our emotions and feelings and hormones. And I have learned that could be dangerous and I could end up getting hurt. I don't want that. It seems that she's on the same page. So I might be entering a polyamorous relationship with this person. I might not. In the end, if it doesn't work out, it's because of her decisions or my decisions. As long as at the end that I need to make sure that I'm good.
Yeah.
And it seems like she's trying to do the same thing. Because the last thing I want to do is hurt anyone. And the last thing I want somebody to do is hurt me.
That's a very responsible approach. And I would pry with more questions about this, but I know that by the next time I see you'll be dating 12 other individuals that I'll have more questions about. No.
I learned after last year, after my
I can't keep track, dude. I cannot. I've stopped trying to keep track. I think you've got a revolving door. It seems like a very interesting, but also exciting and, in my eyes, overwhelming life. Like I don't know how you do it. I can barely handle the one girl I have.
Okay, so
she's great.
So after my separation,
one girl's a lot.
After my separation, I dove deep into being single and exploring.
Yeah.
And the thrills of meeting a new person and entering that honeymoon phase where everything feels wonderful.
Of course.
Yeah. I did a lot of that with a lot of different people, and it was thrilling, but it was taxing emotionally and physically, and
it's like a drug.
It is.
There's like an ultimate high, but then there's a straight come down.
There
right
is,
after.
yeah. And I learned my lesson.
Yeah.
So now I'm more cautious. There's nothing wrong with that, but I'm enjoying the way I'm approaching it now because it feels safe and responsible yet thrilling at the same time.
Nice. I mean, I'm definitely excited for you. You talked to me about this girl off camera before this, and she sounds great. I'm happy for you. I have seen the sort of development and progression that you've made since the last time you were on the pod, and I just see good, bright things for your future, and I'm really happy for you, man. And I just want to say thank you for coming on the pod and talking to me today. And thank you guys for listening and watching. If you guys enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Rate us on your favorite podcast platform, and we will be back next week. Thanks, man.
Well, thank you guys.